Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you managed to get some nice lunch. I'd like to open this afternoon's session, and we're going to hear from Zach Warren, who's Chief Security Advisor for Tanium. As with the sessions this morning, we'll hear a presentation. There will be time for questions at the end. If you would like to, please share pictures, comments, etc. on social media using the hashtag #DigitExpo. I will hand over to Zach. Thank you so much.
Perfect, thank you. All righty, so you all can hear me okay, right? Perfect, love it. We got a great team here working with us to make sure that this gets shared out as well. My name's Zach Warren. As mentioned, I'm the Chief Security Advisor for Tanium. If you haven't heard of Tanium, come down to our booth and I'll be happy to tell you what Tanium does. However, in this environment, I don't typically like to do what a lot of software vendors or manufacturers do and talk about my technology and tell you about my portfolio. What I'd rather do is I'd rather talk to you about cybersecurity as a whole. What I've learned through my experience and what some of the things that I've seen that we as cyber professionals need to be putting a little bit more focus around, okay? So I built this talk track. I call it Winning at Cybersecurity, okay? Because my background is I spent multiple years within the Department of Defense within the United States, so all the fun little three-letter agencies, doing contract work, making sure that they had the security architecture that they needed to be able to secure and keep our country safe and our data safe. On top of that, I've rolled out technology within branches of the military. Largest rollout I had of Tanium before coming to Tanium, I've only been at Tanium for 2 years, but I've been using Tanium for well over 12. Was 1.3 million endpoints at the United States Air Force that I put under management through Tanium. So understanding large, difficult environments is what I have kind of built my career on, and building out better and more comprehensive security programs is what I've been doing over the past 20 years. So in my experience, and I've been spending time in front of a lot of organizations here in Europe now, I was about to say I'm stationed. I'm not stationed anymore. I live in Hamburg, Germany. Married a German about 14 years ago. And so we just moved our family to Germany about 4 years ago. So I'm in Hamburg, Germany now, and that's why I work at Tanium now as a Chief Security Advisor. But what I've been seeing as I'm going around Europe and meeting with banks, retail, manufacturing, government, right? I do a lot of work here in the UK with the MOD. Is kind of a few different things. We have these technology trends that every single one of you is experiencing today, right? You're experiencing this environment of we need to transform. Digital transformation is a huge thing, okay? There's some seats up front, you guys, don't be shy. I'm not gonna kick or bite too hard. And so digital transformation is becoming a big thing. After COVID, right, hybrid work is something that's really interesting. A lot of people are given now the flexibility to work from home or come into the office. Even at Tanium, we're saying, you know, you need to be in the office a couple days a week, but we're not saying every day, right? So this hybrid work is taking place. And then cloud migration. Anybody thinking about working on and getting to the cloud? Absolutely, right? So understanding what applications, how to get all that done, real pain in the rear if you don't understand the complexity between applications, user, and the data that these things are utilizing, right? So these are some of the technology trends that we're seeing. When we're talking about these things, there's a couple of priorities that then start to show up, okay? We're starting to see that organizations really have legacy devices. Show of hands, anybody have at least a server, probably multiple, that you would just love to smash into a bunch of little pieces with a hammer, maybe throw out the window somewhere, maybe even light on fire if you had matches with you, right? So everybody has these devices in their environment. It's a royal pain. We need to be looking at how we can migrate off of these things. And if we can't, how do we secure these devices, especially if they're business critical? And I'll get into that in a minute. Anybody have any regulatory demands of them, right? Anybody have to show that they're compliant to different types of, yeah, absolutely. NIST 2 is a fun one, DORA. I've written white papers on both of those and the things that you should be looking out for. So if you want to have some follow-up conversations on NIST 2 and DORA, feel free to come and talk to me about those as well. It's actually pretty easy to, well, I shouldn't say easy, that's the wrong word, but there's a lot of just basic hygiene that goes into both NIST 2 and DORA. And as you start to check off these boxes, you'll become more and more compliant. So And then we also have just a growing estate, right? And I'll get into this here in a second. It's one of my favorite pictures. So the question is, are we getting better or worse at cyber? So if you think about going and presenting to a board, you would present to the board last year and you'd say, hey board, we've been hit, we've been breached 1,000 times this year, right? If I go this year, I'd go to the board and I'd say we've been breached 2,000 times, right? Depending upon the size of your organization, maybe more, maybe less, whatever, right? And so the board's starting to think, well, we're not getting any better at this because they're used to, building widgets or whatever type of industry that they're in. And so if you're not improving, then you must be getting worse at it. So not understanding that the landscape is just changing, the landscape is difficult, and threats are continuing to change. We're seeing ransomware attacks every 11 seconds, as I'm sure many of you have probably experienced ransomware attacks in your environment. In the United States, it's getting closer to 8 seconds right now because of some of the geopolitical things that are going on. We've spent about $180 billion last year on cybersecurity. Now, this is an interesting number. Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, I saw him on a TV show and he was bragging about having or spending $20 million on cybersecurity. Anybody here would like a $20 million budget for cyber? Yeah, me too. I would love to have that even in government days, right? So absolutely a mind-blowing amount of money to be spent on cyber. But let's look at what does Jamie Dimon do. He runs JP Morgan Chase. Any guesses on what that percentage is? $20 million. What is that percentage of his overall IT budget? Less than 1. Ooh, that's pretty brutal. Not quite. Anybody else? 5%. That's super close. 6%. It's 6% of their budget, right? So let me ask you again, is Jamie Dimon spending enough money on cybersecurity? No. Nah, not enough. Not in my opinion, but I'm a cyber guy, so I'm a little bit biased. We have a idea or a culture in security of point solutions, right? Best of breed point solutions. So many times in cyber, an issue comes up and we say, oh, we got to build something to fix that problem. So we go and we build something and we fix that problem. So how many tool sets are in a typical environment? I'm typically seeing somewhere between 50 to 70 different security-focused tool sets in most environments. That's insane to me. I like simplification. I like to make things as easy as possible. We need to start reducing these things. And so I'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. We need to be moving more towards platform solutions. And then finally, most organizations don't even know what they have in their environment. Let me ask you this might be a personal question, so you can feel free to answer it or not. How many of you would actually put your hand in the fire for your CMDB? In other words, who trusts their CMDB? Who has a CMDB? Right? So I've asked that question before and people have looked at me like, I don't even have a CMDB, right? So do you understand what your assets are? Do you understand how your devices are configured? Most organizations are having difficulties with that, and shadow IT is a major issue for a lot of organizations. And so my main point, the thing that I talk about the most is visibility. You cannot protect what you cannot see. So if you think about a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, what is his or her number one goal? What did they get hired to do? Protect the organization, right? Absolutely. It is their goal, their responsibility to protect the IT assets, right, of that organization. Explain to me, please, how I'm supposed to do that if I don't even know what those assets are. Right? So for me as a CISO, I want to know exactly what I'm supposed to protect. Okay? Just like you want to know what you're supposed to protect, right? If you're the father or mother of a household and I say it's your responsibility to protect your children and you don't even know how many kids you have, all right? That might be a bad example. But then you're in a bad place, right? Who are you supposed to be protecting? Okay? So that's a very important thing. So this is my feel-good slide, okay? This is the environment that most of us work in. Lots of applications, lots of data, lots of connections, and we don't really understand it. How many times have we walked into an environment and said, hey, show me a network diagram of exactly how our company is set up? And everybody looks at each other, did you? I've got one, and you roll out this big thing and they stick it up on the wall, or somebody walks up to the whiteboard and takes out a pen, and they start to try to draw it. Oh, Bob, you forgot this over here. Oh, wait, we got that over there. Remember we just put that system in over here? Oh, yeah. This is a major issue. But what I want to say as I show this to you, take a deep breath. It's not your fault, okay? It is not your fault. We have been building architectures over the past years. Everybody's been trying to do the best with the technology that they had at hand at the time, okay? Now, no one's really good at documentation. What is wrong with us as people that we're not good at documentation? No organization is good at doing this, right? But it's not your fault. We've all inherited environments like this. Now it's our responsibility to make sense of environments like this. Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple more chairs over here, guys. All right. So what are we going to do? So now I'm going to talk about, we've all agreed upon the things that I've been talking about. We all live in these environments. If you don't see yourself reflected in any of this, please, you can feel free to get up and leave because you're better than the rest of us, right? No, but I have had some people challenge and say, that makes no sense to me. I see everything. I'm like, okay, either one, you're lying, or two, you have absolutely no idea, right? So you can leave as well. Not just joking. So what are we going to be doing? Preparation and countermeasures is what I want to look at. Like I said before, I like to simplify things. I like to make things easier. Too many organizations, boards, C-levels, they all try to think that cybersecurity is some, dark magic. I like to actually have them believe that because then I look like a rock star. Right? But the truth of the matter is I like to simplify things, okay? There's 3 things that I want all of you to focus on coming forward or coming out of this talk. They are visibility and control, right? I already talked about visibility being extremely important. Continuous safeguarding, which is basically measuring, okay? And I'll get into what that looks like. And then finally, detection and countermeasures, which is my favorite place and where I spent most of my career, is finding and catching bad guys, okay? So first of all, with visibility and control, there's 3 things I'd like you to focus on. Asset discovery. Please understand what assets you have. Now, what is an asset? Sounds like a simple question. Is an asset just endpoints, end devices, servers, laptops? No. It is, but it's also applications, right? OS, what's on those devices, right? Those are your assets. You need to understand what your critical assets are in your environment. I'll get into that in a second. So you can only protect what you know. Second of all is access control. Who has access to what? And can I control those devices, okay? So to see a device is one thing, good job, that you're already miles ahead. But then to take that device and actually gain control of that device to make sure that it has the right level of patching, that there's no applications on there that are going to harm your environment, right? Whenever the work that I've done and the assessments that I've done in environments, that's one of major things. We all talk about vulnerabilities and needing to patch for vulnerabilities and getting OS up to the latest and greatest. But there's also applications that are on tons of devices that are very dangerous for organizations that a lot of people don't even know are on certain devices, okay? So making sure that those type of applications are not in there. And then finally, identifying your critical assets. So the reason I like to talk about identifying critical assets is that's really where your budget should be focused, okay? So bad actors are coming after us. They're coming after our pocketbook. I want to make it more difficult, more expensive to come after my organization. Let me ask you this very simple question. How fast do you have to be to outrun a bear? You got to be faster than the guy next to you. That's it. You got to be quicker than the other meal, right? If you're the fastest meal, they're not going to catch you. He's not going to get you, right? So that's why I run marathon. No, I'm just joking. I'm not really afraid of bears. Well, I guess I am, but I don't see them very often in Germany. The thing is you have to be at a better place than other people in your industry, okay? If I'm in finance, for example, or retail, whatever, it doesn't matter. I want to be at a better place than my competitors. I want to make sure that my vulnerabilities, the basic vulnerabilities that you can scan from the internet, understand what you look like from an attacker's perspective. And if you can start to close those doors, then you become an unattractive target to them because they're going to have to put more resources, more money, more attention to get into your environment. And what are they going to do? They're going to be like water, my friends, to quote Bruce Lee. They're going to go towards the easier target. They're going to flow towards the easier target. Just like if you walk through my neighborhood, nice little neighborhood in Germany, there's no doors that are locked. There's none of that stuff. But if you come towards my house, you will see a big F-150 pickup truck parked up front, right? Still got the gun rack in the back window. No gun, though. I'm just joking. I'm not that much of a hick. But I'm from West Texas, so that is typical in West Texas. All right, so my house is not a house that you want to break into. But my neighbors, they leave the doors open, lights on. That's a house that you can easily take advantage of. So where do we want to start? There's a couple of different programs I think we need to be focused on. Number one, asset lifecycle programs. Again, understanding your assets, understanding what's on them, understanding the age of them, and cycling them out, right? We want to get rid of old technology as much as we can. And improving your CMDB really is an important thing. I just recently had a CISO of a large university here in the UK that said to me, hey, Zach, I'm actually going to focus on rolling out Zero Trust, and I'm investing in XDR. And I said, fantastic. These are things that you absolutely should take advantage of. And then I said, so what are you going to be basing this on? If you're going to be doing a Zero Trust environment here in a university, then I understand that you understand very well the assets, the different roles. You know what you're going to be doing with staff, students, people who are studying in different areas, researchers and things like that. And your CMDB must be picobello, right? Super nice. He's like, I don't have a CMDB. I said, okay, so how are you going to know what devices are healthy and should be allowed on the network and which ones should be denied access? Well, I'm not real sure, okay? So CMDB, asset lifecycle programs, those are the things that are going to be helping him to do that basic IT hygiene so that he can then build these big, architectures, these big, thought topics around Zero Trust and others into his organization. But he cannot do Zero Trust today because he hasn't done this work, okay? So that's going to change for him. The second thing is authorization, right? Authentication, authorization. I won't do any work with anybody that doesn't have multi-factor authentication in their environment. Just get it done. It's the easiest thing in the world to, well, no, that's not true. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. But get it done. And then also understand what your vulnerabilities are. You want to understand where you are, where you're vulnerable, and then you need to close those gaps, okay? So if you focus on these two high-level programs, right, with these others, you're going to be able to be in a different place. And again, I want you to remember, this is no longer a set it and forget it. There's nothing that you can configure today that doesn't need care and feeding. You need to make sure that you're caring and feeding your environments. So I like questions. Right? I like to talk about things. I like to have people give me their answers, their insights, and understand what environments look like. So I like to talk about these 4 different things when it comes to this, okay? Sun Tzu said, I know the outcome of every battle if I know myself and I know the attacker, okay? So whether I'll win that battle or lose that battle, I know the outcome of every battle. So in order to do that, in order to know yourselves, you need to start asking questions of your environment. And these are questions that everybody in your security organization, and I would even say in the IT organization, should be able to answer and ask of the organization. And these are also questions that you should be taking up to your executives and even to the board. My favorite one here, of course, as you could all probably guess, is what do we look like to an attacker? So making sure that you're doing the right types of pen testing and things like that so that you know where your vulnerabilities are, so that you can judge what the outcome of an attack would be, right? So we need to understand these things. How many assets do I have? So if you were an asset of your team, how many different answers would you get? A CISO of a large logistics firm here in the UK, he and I were sitting down and he shared a beautiful picture with me, and it's a comic where a CISO says, hey, how many end devices do we have? And he had somebody that ran their EDR tool say we have 6,732 devices. someone that got into the SIM and said, no, we've only got 5,422 devices. And so, you know what I mean? There's 5 different answers to this simple question. And, well, how do you work with that? How do you know that you've closed all your gaps if that's the data that you're working with, right? So we need to figure out how to integrate that and understand truly how many assets we have. The second thing is, so first that's visibility and control, right? We need to get visibility, we need to be able to control those devices. The second thing we need to be doing is continuous safeguarding. This is, like I said, not a set it and forget it type of world that we live in. So we need to make sure that we understand who our powerful users are. When it was my role to get into organizations and showcase their weaknesses for them, my favorite individual to get was through a phishing attack, through social engineering, was an executive that had been at the company for 10 to 15 years. And why did I target individuals like that? Part of it was because of the respect that they demanded in the organization. So if I shot out any other emails, people would typically open anything that I put on those emails. But secondarily was because they typically had access to multiple systems that they absolutely should not have access to, right? Because I'm the boss, give me access to that, right? Or I've been at the company and I've had 3 or 4 different roles, 5 different roles as I've worked my way up to the level that I'm at. And nobody has removed my access to all the applications and all the devices and everything else that I've used over the past 10 years at this corporation. And so those individuals are really fun to target because you want to talk about lateral movement, right? I can be all over your environment and you will be none the wiser because I'm doing it legitimately. Absolutely legitimate. Well, not really, but you know what I mean. So the second thing is patching. Anybody get a warm, fuzzy feeling when it comes to patching? Anybody love patching, right? Watching that cycle. Did all those machines reboot or not, right? If they didn't reboot, well, are you patched? Patch is on the machine. Absolutely not, right? So this is just a royal pain in the, you guys add an R to that word. I really don't understand that. So it's a royal pain, right? But the thing of it is it has to be done. So why don't we automate some of this? Why don't we look at some of the low-level stuff, right? The things that we know what the outcome's going to be, that's just a pain to do anyways. And let's just automate as much patching as we possibly can. Right? Or look for those special cases and automate those. And I know every one of you is like, but Zach, you don't understand. My environment's so complex, and oh, I can't just patch everything. Yes, I do understand. And yes, you can patch just about everything. You just have to come up with the right policies, the right procedures around these things, and rethink what you're doing around patching. Okay? The way we've done it for the past 20 years is not necessarily the best way to do it today, right? So just so you know, the United States Air Force, 1.3 million endpoints, 98% patched at all times, okay? So it's possible. And please, don't try to tell me that your environment's more complex than the United States Air Force, right? And we've done it in the Marines and in the US Army as well. Very complex environments, okay? And legacy technology. I know, scary, but it's true. Okay, and then the third thing is, again, I talk about increasing the costs for attackers. If you're compliant and if you're closing all these vulnerabilities, now, compliancy does not equal security. We all can all agree on that? Can we all nod? Yep, absolutely, okay. However, compliancy is a great gateway to security. It's kind of your gateway drug to get into security. So if you can say, I'm compliant with these things, you already know that you're doing the right things, you've got the right IT hygiene in place, you're going to become more secure. I always say, IT ops done well equals good security, right? Or you could turn it the other way around. Good security is IT ops done well, right? To my IT ops brothers and sisters in the room, thank you for all your hard work. So where do we start? Here's 2 programs that I think all organizations should be really hitting hard with. First of all, foundational programs like war games and active threat hunting. How many of you all are doing tabletop exercises and war game type of scenarios and exercises in your organizations? Great. I want to see more hands. And if you were shy, one more time. Anybody who was shy just a second ago, put your hand up. Yeah, okay, this is not happening enough. Please, take a look at this. Let me give you an example of why this is so important. a very good friend of mine called me up. He had just gotten into the private sector. He'd become a CISO of a large manufacturer in the United States, building big trucks, really big trucks. And it's global. You've got some of their big trucks here in Europe as well. And when he started looking at that organization, coming from a very rigid organization that he came from, he started to say, I don't believe anything anyone's telling me in this organization around our security. I don't trust our incident response. I don't trust anything that anybody's telling me. So he said, Zach, could you come in and could you do an assessment of our environment as a third party? And I said, absolutely. So I went in and I said to his team, started out with the engineering guys, right? I like to always start out with the smartest people in the room. And I said, this is how you've been breached. What do you do now? Okay? And they all started talking techie talk, talking about all the devices that they'd be getting into, all the technology they'd be utilizing. I was taking mad notes because they were using so many different types of security technology to answer this question, right? And arguing about it. Finally, they came to and understood how I had done that. It was all theoretical. Let me just make that clear. I did not take down their manufacturing floor as in the breach was, right? But I could have with a ping, by the way. So as they all figured out exactly what had happened and how I'd gotten into their environment, I said, okay, great. You guys have solved for this breach. Now you understand how it happened. What do you do with this information? And then there was no real clear understanding of what incident response meant to this organization. So I then reported this back to the CISO. He had me present this to the management team. I ran them through a little bit of a test as well. Still no real understanding of incident response. I had to then go and present this to the C-level. And as I sat next to the CFO, he was a gentleman that had just gotten, I did my research, right? I have my ways of doing research on individuals. And he had just gotten a quarterly bonus of $6 million. So talking about the people that are sitting next to me, fairly intimidating, gentleman. And when I started presenting to them about how I had breached their organization and the lack of incident response and what I could have done in their environment because of my freedom of movement in their environment, because of their lack of visibility, the CFO was absolutely shocked. And he was about to start yelling at the CIO, and he said, hey, is this what this kid is telling me? Could this really happen in our environment? I was like, hey, bro, I'm like 35 at the time. Like, I'm not a kid. And he's like, yes, sir, absolutely. And that's why I've been asking for the budget that I put in front of you, right? And you have not given me the budget that I need. You keep cutting me down because we want to focus on building the widgets in the manufacturing floor. And you don't see what we do in IT and in security especially as being important. And that's why we've asked Zach to come and tell this story to you, right? So the CFO then said, checkbook is open, fix the problem. So we wound up coming up with 25 different security initiatives. I built them in a magic quadrant of what was the biggest, most expensive things to do, all the way down to low level of effort, a little bit of money, easy things to do, okay? After we did all those things, it took us about 3 years to get this company to where they should be. And the CISO won CISO of the Year for the Pacific Northwest of the United States, right? I'm still waiting for a card or a cake or something, but I probably will continue to wait. So anyways, so that's the long way of me telling you, please do these things because there's added benefit to it. You will find out where your weaknesses are that you can improve upon, and then you can take these findings up the chain of command and say, hey, we need more investment here, okay? And then I already talked about our warm, fuzzy feelings around patch management. Let's automate as much of this as we can. Start to look at different things within your environment that you need to be scaling and you need to be automating, right? Things that you touch too much are things that are either broken and you need to go and fix them, right? Think about that, right? Or they're things that we need to start to automate and figure out how do we automate these things. Okay, so again, I like to talk about questions. I like to ask questions about environments. And when it comes to these, does anybody have a guess as far as which one of these is my favorite question? Which one's your favorite question? Just go ahead and shout it out. I like to hear voices. Then I don't feel like I'm all by myself in here.
What could possibly go wrong here?
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, I like that one too. Well, I can come up with some good answers to that question. My favorite one here, I'm all about teams. I love building teams. I love to understand who I'm working with, what they're good at, right? So one of my things is, people talk about building, taking your weaknesses and turning them into strengths. Well, what I've learned through the years of building high impact teams is you can take your weaknesses and build them into strengths, but you then kind of become mediocre, right, at best. If you take your strengths and build on your strengths, then you can become extraordinary, right? So I like to focus on what people's strengths are and enable their strengths and move the ego completely out of the way. My favorite thing is teams, right? Can our team properly talk about what we're doing? Incident response is an example, and I'll bring that up in another question. But we need to be building stronger teams that are enabled as well, right? So now we get to the fun part, in my humble opinion, because visibility and control, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of that IT hygiene that has kind of gone by the wayside. Why has it gone by the wayside? Because it's not the cool, fun thing to do, right? It's actually documentation, it's building visibility, it's actually understanding what your environment is. Continuous safeguarding is measurement. Who likes to measure themselves, right? It's hard to do, but it's important because are you better today than you were 6 months ago? Do you even know that, right? I think about that when it comes to my health, for example. I want to do something like drink less sodas. Well, if I don't measure that, how many sodas did I drink last week? I don't know. How many sodas did I drink this week? I don't know. Am I getting better at not drinking sodas? I don't know, right? So it's the same thing with our environments. We got to measure them on a regular basis. So when it comes to detection and countermeasures, here's some things that we need to be able to do. Can you today, with confidence, identify machines that have been compromised? Right? That's a tough question. Do you know if a bad actor is in your environment? Do you see suspicious behavior? What's the number one threat to organizations today?
Insider threat.
Holy cow, somebody get this guy. We need to give him a Tanium chocolate bar, this guy right in the front. Absolutely, insider threat is the number one threat today. And is it because people are malicious and they want to tear up their company? No, they're making mistakes. Have you guys seen that image of a sidewalk, right? And then a park, and then there's that trail through the park, right? Well, I was in the military, so I'd walk and then I'd cut my square, you know. But if you look at that, that's what people do. They like to flow, find the easiest path. So in our IT environments, when we start to say, here's the policy, here's the procedure of something, then people are going to do what people do. They're going to find the easiest solution to do that. How many of you have spun, I'm just joking, I'm not going to have you raise your hands. Many people have spun up an instance of something in AWS or Azure that they did not report to their CISO, that they did not ask permission to do. Why? Because if you do, it takes too long to get your server spun up, it takes too long to get access to the assets that you need to do your job. Okay? So there's a big question on policy and procedure that needs to be looked at there. So can you detect, do you have shadow IT? If you have shadow IT and you don't see all of your environment, then your answer to this is no, I cannot. Second is response. Are you able to respond to an attack in your environment? And are you able to do it with confidence? In other words, now that I've detected with confidence that there's something happening on a specific device, we'll just make it nice and simple, one device. Now, do I have the power to quarantine that device? Do I have the power to sniper patch that device? Do I have the power to take some sort of action, some sort of remediation action on that device? Okay? And how quickly can I do that? Because I've been asked multiple times by individuals, does the CISO care about real-time visibility and control? And what do you guys think? Does CISO really care about real-time? No. Not if the company doesn't demand an SLA of that CISO. If it's not in the policy, it's not worth giving it or spending more of my budget on. Okay? And I think that's where we go really, really wrong. I think the budget should be there for real time. Why? Because when you are breached, now does real time matter? Absolutely. Absolutely it does. You need to have real-time visibility of your environment, and you need to be able to take real-time action in your environment. Because if it takes you a long time to solve for a problem, then that bad actor has the time that he or she needs to move around in your environment, infect more machines, actually find where your critical data sits, and encrypt those servers. Right? And then, if they have plenty of time, find your backups and encrypt those too. One of the saddest things I've ever seen, and I had to help an organization fix this, was they were doing all the right things. Ransomware is a major concern, so they had their critical machines, servers all set up. They've got their backups set up. Where were their backups? Same data center, same network, right next door, right? Made it ease of use, okay? Now I'll talk to you a little bit about the scale, right? The sliding scale of ease of use versus security. So when they get breached, when I looked at attacking them, right? I said, well, great, I've encrypted your servers and I've encrypted your backup. Good job, right? That doesn't work. And so we moved those to another segment of their environment, put a lot more barriers around getting to those devices, which made it a lot better. However, I went back to do a follow-up meeting with them and a follow-up assessment. They were proud because not only have we backed them up, put them on a different segment, we've basically got a moat around where they, ooh, wow, look at the power I have. I said, let there be light. No? Okay. Who's leaning on the switch? Okay, there we go. Yeah, absolutely. Good job, guy. So the thing of it is then I took a look at, well, now you've broken it, young man. So I took a look at that environment, and I started looking at that. They said, Zach, we've taken it a step further. Not only have we moved it, we've also encrypted it, right? Our backups are also encrypted. So that's fantastic. So I took a look at that device, and I found the encryption keys in the logs of that server, so I could unencrypt it for them, which was fun. So make sure that if you do encrypt your devices, that you're storing all this other stuff somewhere else. Okay? So just a few, word to the wise, through some of the experiences here. All right. So where do we start? Incident response plans. Who has an incident response plan in their organization that they truly understand and trust? Come on, I need to see more hands, please. God, please. Okay, one, yes. Okay, you can go. Thank you for being here. No, so here's the thing. I've asked organizations, show me your incident response plan, and I've actually had like books dropped on my table. I'm like, whoa, that's like 600 pages, man, small print. Nobody's gonna read that, okay? So we need to understand what our incident response plan is, and we need to be able to talk about it. We need people in the organizations to understand it, right? So you need to understand how you're going to respond, to detect and respond to a breach, right? You need to understand roles and responsibilities. Now, this is one of my favorite topics because, as I mentioned before, I love building powerful teams. When you talk about roles and responsibilities, leave your ego out of all of it, okay? I've been in war rooms where I've needed information from specific teams, and the manager of a team shows up, the guy or gal that runs that team. And they're like, oh, I'm here to do the investigation part. I'm going to put the forensics together for you. And I'm like, well, hold on just a second. I know your team, okay? And there's a gentleman or a lady on your team back behind you that's the forensics expert, and I want to talk to her. So, no, I don't want to talk to you. No, I don't want you delivering the message. Go find the right person on your team to be part of my incident response plan, okay? So egos have to be checked when it comes to IR. Absolutely checked, okay? And I've done that before and gotten a lot of hot water and made a lot of people angry until we were able to solve the problem, and then they realized I was right. So keep your ego out. Make sure that you understand the strengths of the people on your teams and you enable those strengths. Super important concept. Make sure that you've got the right person doing the right role in incident response. and streamline it as much as you possibly can. Enable your people. If I have somebody on my team that's just way better at doing stuff than a certain thing that I am, why in the world would I get in his or her way? Right? Why would you do that? But people do it all the time. It's mind-boggling to me. Okay, and then pen testing. Who has regular pen testing in their environments? Yes, this makes me happy. Yes, absolutely. And this goes back to what? Understanding what you look like to an attacker, okay? If I can help you by attacking your environment because you trust me and I'm not going to really break anything, and then I can come back to you and I can say, hey, these are where your weaknesses are, and this is how easy it was to get into your environment, and these are the things that you could do to slow me down or stop me next time, that's worth that person's weight in gold, right? Pen testers are some of my favorite people, okay? So do regular pen testing. Make sure you understand what the weaknesses are in your environment, and then do something about them. No, you don't have to show your hands. Many organizations get the deliverable from a pen tester, look at it, and say, man, we suck at all these things. And then they file it away. All right? So if that's happening in your environment, please be that loud voice that says, well, don't we want to take a look at that again and maybe build some priorities on things that we need to be doing? Think about that magic quadrant that I talked about earlier. Build something like that. If you get something back from a red teamer or from a pen tester and it says, hey, here's some of your gaps, go and see how you can build some programs around these things. Go see how you can solve these things. Think about the cost of it. Put it in a nice magic quadrant. Deliver that to your management, if you're not management, and say, hey, look, we could actually take care of some of these issues, right? And it's a great way to win respect and to get things done in your organization. Take the power into your hands if you're not giving it yourself. Okay, so here's the next thing. Again, to my questions. If you look at these questions, it's really trying to understand what you can do and what you can't do today, right? And measuring where you are when it comes to incident response. Any guesses on where my favorite question is on this one? It should be everybody's favorite question. If it's not your favorite question, then I'm disappointed. Actually, I shouldn't put that much pressure on you people. Sorry about that.
I'm going to go with, can our team walk anyone?
Yes, absolutely. Can our team walk anyone through our incident response plan? Okay? So if I was to randomly pick an individual out of this crowd and say, come up here, stand right next to me, and explain to all of us what your incident response plan looks like, how many people would be confident in doing that? So I'm going to see if I can pick somebody. Oh, look, he's looking at me. He has an incident response plan. No, yeah, you. No, now he's looking around. Now he's scared. No, but you'll see, if you ask people, talk about your incident response plan, they'll kind of do this number like, oh God, please don't talk to me about that. Because it is, right? People have a lack of understanding what incident response means in their organization, okay? So if there's any major takeaway that I'd like you to take with you is ask that tough question. What does our incident response plan look like, right? How do we respond to a breach? How do we respond and how do we take care of different vulnerabilities? I assume, and I'm not wrong in assuming, but every single one of your organizations has been breached or has been attacked, right? And so how do you respond to these things? This is not anymore it's not going to happen to me. Years ago, people used to say to me, oh, but Zach, my company's not that interesting, right? And we've all learned that that's not the truth, right? We all have relationships. A perfect example of this is there was a bank that I got called in to support, and they had just been breached, and we were looking at exactly how it happened. And my skill set is forensics. My skill set is going in and doing an investigation. And so what I started to look at was how and where patient 0 had been affected, okay? And what I discovered was this. Everybody in this bank loved to go downstairs on their break and order food at a kind of a mom and pop type of restaurant in the building. It was kind of an Asian kind of mix type of restaurant. Great food. I ate there as well. I just didn't make the mistake that a lot of people in this bank did. Somebody had taken a QR code, right? Because these nice people that ran this restaurant, they thought that they would make it interesting for all these young people that came into their building, all of them on their iPhones, nobody on Android, just iPhones. And they would all scan a QR code to get the menu, right? And they would go through and they would order from that menu. Well, somebody really smart went and made his or her own QR code, because it actually wasn't a guy, and slapped that down on the counter over the QR code from this restaurant, and people were scanning that. Got the menu, but also picked up a couple of other things with them, and took that up into their environment. Anyways, long story short, it was this small restaurant that led to an infection in a large bank on the west coast of the United States that caused for lots and lots of damage, right? So to think that you're not important, to think that no one's going to use you to get into another environment or want to get into your environment is a falsehood, okay? So any other businesses that you're doing business with, you are a catalyst or can be a catalyst into another environment if you feel like your business is not as important, right? Think about what you actually do as an organization. What are you actually in the business of doing, okay? And then understand what those critical assets are and make sure you're protecting them. So this is a key point here for me. All right, so here's kind of my closing here. I want you to take away these three things. Let's start looking at and thinking about these things on a regular basis. Do we have visibility of our environment? With the visibility that we have, can we control things in our environment, right? Simple example, found vulnerabilities in my environment. How painful is it for me to patch for those vulnerabilities, okay? Fix it. Second, continuous safeguarding. Am I better today than I was yesterday? Do I even know, all right? So start to understand that you can't just set things and forget about it. Start to understand that you need to measure yourself, you need to measure your organization, you need to make sure that you're improving. And then finally, detection and countermeasures is all about confidence, okay? You need to be confident that you can find the bad actors in your environment and they're not hiding out. My favorite example of this is I did an assessment of an environment and I found a bad actor who'd been using a backdoor into an environment for 11 years. 11 years before I found it, okay? And they had exfiltrated a lot of information to a red country that likes to build stuff that looks like things that Americans build. And so we were able to close that door. But after 11 years of IP theft, you know what I mean? How many billions of dollars were lost there, okay? And do that with confidence and then make sure that you're doing what you need to do to be able to respond, to close up these things and to be able to remediate these attacks, okay? So if we can focus on these three things, then I've got my cheesy slide here, then we understand what our risk is and we can be a level safer. I should put an R on there because I will not ever guarantee 100% safety, just as none of us can, right? So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time. Feel free to reach out to me, right? Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, if you want to have any follow-up conversations, right? And I do appreciate that you all laughed at this. This just warms the heart. Because absolutely, I want to build out my network. I want to be connected with more people that have an interest in cybersecurity, and especially younger people. Sorry for all you old guys and gals out there. Younger people, the next generation of cyber professionals are really where I'm putting all of my focus today, right? Why is that? Just like everything else, they're our future. They're the ones that are going to protect my data when I'm retired and I'm sitting on my rocker on my ranch in West Texas, looking at my horses and cattle with my grandkids on my knee. I want to be able to trust you people. So please, if you have any, especially if you have any young people that are like high school, college age, that are like into computers, get them into cybersecurity, all right? So that's my final message. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.